He transferred to Clemson and is graduating in May with his Bachelor's of Science degree in Computer Science. So please help me in welcoming Bryson.
Thanks. And also really appreciate Dr. Sai and Dr. Johnson for inviting me. So I'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully everybody has clicked on the link in the chat. If you haven't, you can go ahead. That's my presentation, and put in your name, and you should see the link. So, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I guess really today what I'm going to talk about is how I went from being a nursing student to being a computer science student at Clemson. So where I started, what I did, why I did all of the decisions that I made along the way, and how if you are in a similar situation to any of the things I'll mention, hopefully you can take advantage of and have good outcomes. So first, I'll just go ahead and start with a little, I just kind of want to see where everybody is right now with their major, actually. So you should be able to answer and I'll be able to see it. Okay, so we have somebody in here that's a computer scientist. All right. Somebody's graduating. Okay. English major, biology major. Nice. All right. Well, kind of diverse, I guess. But yeah. So kind of what I did before I was at USC Lancaster. I know that I was introduced a little bit, and she told you that I actually went to Chester Senior High School. While I was there, you know, I was very certain that I was going to be a nurse and do nursing degree whenever I went to college. I took their certified nursing assistant class, and if anybody's familiar, that's kind of what a lot of people will do, work in a clinical setting and, you know, get experience while they're in school. So I also volunteered in a hospital during that time after I got my CNA license, just because when I was in the CNA program, I was actually underage. So I was under 18, and I was not allowed to work in most hospitals, and I wasn't exactly wanting to work in geriatrics at the time. So I just decided I'll just volunteer. You know, it's not always about the money. You know, sometimes it's just about getting experience. So yeah, that was actually me. And I wonder if you can tell which one was me, but you know, yeah. So this was actually a picture of the volunteering experience that I did. I actually worked in the emergency room and also in the surgical area. So I would be the person that checks you in before surgery, and I would also be the person that would, if you were in the emergency room, come around, give you blankets, give you food, water, that kind of stuff, just to make everything a little bit more comfortable for everybody. Wait 1 second. Dr. Sai, I actually won't let me share to the screen, but I will put the link in the chat one more time. But either way, yeah. So what I kind of want to see is, I know that somebody was in biology. So I was kind of curious if anybody is actually interested in healthcare. So you should see another prompt. Just go ahead and, you know, answer there. All right, we're getting some results. Okay, so mostly not sure, or you're just not really interested. So yeah, it's good to know. But when I arrived at USC Lancaster, this was after, you know, high school, of course. I was first accepted into the nursing program at USC Lancaster, and like I said, that's where I was wanting to go. When I first got here, I actually said, you know what, I don't think I want to do nursing anymore. I think I actually want to pursue possibly, being a doctor, right? So I transferred into biology. And one thing that I quickly learned while I was at USC Lancaster and just while I was generally, in college, I mean, I still feel this way, is I was not really a fan of school. It was not my thing, not enjoyable to me. I mean, I was doing fine in it, I was doing well, but just not really an enjoyable experience. So I said, how am I going to make myself go for another 8 to 12 years after I finish undergrad? And I said, that's just not going to happen. I'm going to be burned out. So I did not want to be a biology teacher. And I felt that that was really one of the only routes for me to take at the time if I were to graduate with a 4-year degree and not want to go to medical school. So I made the conscious decision to jump around majors. And, I actually talked with Dr. Johnson. I talked with many of the people at USC Lancaster about, different degrees I could possibly choose. And, one thing that I can really say is really helpful about USC Lancaster is you have that really small, small group of teachers, faculty, all that kind of stuff. And you can really get close with your professors. This was a chemistry club whenever we actually visited the College of Engineering at USC, their main campus. But I kind of wanted to say, what are some of the benefits apart from the things that I've just mentioned about, going to a small community college first? Well, the average cost of freshman year at a 4-year institution is $17,797, which is quite extreme, but for, me, it was free, it was free to go to USC Lancaster. I actually got paid, and I'm sure that many of you have possibly seen how, cheap it is to go to a community college instead of first going to a 4-year institution. So, there's some good things, there's some positives. But yeah, so really kind of the summer before I transferred to Clemson, I wanted to get some more experience and I wanted to do something besides schoolwork, right? So, I actually ended up talking with Dr. Sai because he was, fairly well known to me that he did research and needed research assistance over the summer. So that picture on the right is actually me whenever I worked in his organic chemistry lab. So that was actually a lot of fun, learned a lot of new things about organic chemistry. I had never actually taken an organic chemistry class, but it was actually a blast to work in his lab. So that was fun. But I did ultimately transfer to Clemson, and I have a couple of things to say about that, right? Is, to tell you the truth, I told you all of the positives about USC Lancaster, right? All of the, being able to transfer to a community, like being at a community college where I said that it's a lot cheaper. And for most people, it's free, or you can get, paid to go to the community college, right? But with that being said, on average, transfer students will pay more money in the long term for college. And I'll tell you the reason why, and I'll tell you my experience and ways that I think that you can improve and make it to where you can ultimately spend less money. For me, that was the case. I spent less money because of the path I took, but it took a conscious effort for sure. So one thing that I found whenever I transferred to Clemson, the 4-year institution, is many of the advisors that you're going to first go to as a transfer student are going to be intended for freshman year students. So students that are their first year in college, that kind of thing. And one thing about that is they have a plan built for freshmen going into college. So they don't necessarily account for people that already have a massive amount of credits from a different institution, maybe a different route that's the non-traditional route, but for me, what I had to do is I had to go beyond my advisor. Because if I would have listened to everything my advisor said to me, it would have taken me much longer than 3 years additional after going to a community college for 1 year. So that's why you really have to make a conscious effort, because otherwise you will end up paying more. But yeah, so where exactly did I struggle whenever I was at a community college? One thing that I thought starting at a community college, I mean, I don't know, I guess media, that kind of thing, I thought it was bad or something. And to tell you the truth, that is absolutely ridiculous. And if anybody in the crowd right now is thinking that, get that out of your head, because it really does not matter. the freshman level classes that you're going to take at USC Lancaster, the freshman level classes that you're going to take at Clemson, they're going to be relatively similar. They're going to be almost identical in essence. You know, I mean, there's not much that's going to change your freshman year, and maybe even some for sophomore year. So definitely don't feel pressured that you have to go to a four-year institution. I mean, some people even just going to community college is enough. I mean, it's fine. I mean, you know, if you're, you know, but yeah. And one thing that scared me even further was Clemson said that 90% of their students that transferred failed Calculus 2 if they were taking it. So I was transferring ultimately into a computer science degree, and I had to take Calculus 2 at that time. And, you know, that number is scary because, you know, 90% is saying that even students that are trying hard, you know, even students that have put a conscious effort into their studies are failing. And that's a terrible thing to say. You know, that's a terrible thing for me to feel. So I actually ended up taking calculus at USC Lancaster just because, you know, at that time I was still nervous and I didn't know anything about that. Four-year institutions are really, you know, it's fine. You know, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal for me to take it at Clemson. One other thing is I just decided to transfer into computer science. I mean, to tell you the truth, I really liked math, and I knew that computer science paid a good salary. So I said, let's do computer science, because why not, right? You know, I had actually never coded in my life, and, you know, I felt underprepared. So the second I got there, I was trying to definitely do my best, right? But I'm going to actually I'm going to shift gears in the presentation and actually talk about some of the experiences I had beyond Clemson now. But first, I'm going to talk about something a little, you know, strange. Are there actually any people that are fans of Spider-Man or country music fans in the crowd? And I will explain why on the next slide. Okay, so we've got some. So it looks like people are fans of country music. Okay, okay, nice. I like it. Okay. All right, that's pretty good. You know, I guess it's overwhelming support for just about both of these because, yeah. So where did that lead to? So yes, I actually went to Vanderbilt University to do something called a research experience. And if you're unfamiliar, there's these things called research experiences for undergraduate students, which is called an REU. What is this? Basically, the government funds undergraduate students to go to a university somewhere around the US. They can work with a lab, in a hospital. In my case, I actually worked at the medical center in Vanderbilt. But I'll tell you some of the really cool things I did while I was actually in Nashville, Tennessee. So if anybody knows Nashville, that is where country music is, right? So while I was there, I actually got to see Thomas Rhett perform a concert during the CMAs. But it was actually not the CMAs, but I got to get front row tickets for $20. So if anybody knows, you know, anything about concerts, that is amazing. Okay. So why Spider-Man? So a friend of mine, so I was actually staying with, while I was at Vanderbilt doing the research experience, I was actually in a dorm with four other guys. And one of the guys knew somebody at iHeartRadio, and he got 2 free early screenings to the most recent Spider-Man movie while I was there. So it was like Far From Home, if anybody cares to know the specifics. So that was crazy. So like 2 weeks in advance, I got to watch, you know, an early screening of Spider-Man, and I got to go to a country music concert while I was there. So really probably some of the coolest experiences while I was doing this research experience. So it's not just work all the time, right? But what exactly did I do while I was at Vanderbilt, right? So one way to describe it is basically just to show you it. But before I show you it, what I want to say is I basically worked with clinicians. So that was nurse practitioners, that might be nurses, that might also be doctors, right? I worked with many of those. And what I was trying to do is, I'm sure that many of you have heard of the opioid epidemic, but there's also something a little bit less known, and it's about antibiotics, right? So overprescribing of antibiotics can lead to something like superbugs, or basically them not becoming as immune, like people in the community having a bacteria that's immune to certain antibiotics. So one thing that I was trying to do is I was trying to show people, I was trying to help doctors, clinicians in general, to show them that they may be overprescribing medication, like antibiotics in a comfortable way to the clinicians, right? To make them not be upset with me and that kind of thing. So when we first started out, this is what I came to. I came to that this was the dashboard that they were proposing to show clinicians. This would tell you, you know, how your antibiotic prescribing rates are. It would just have a bunch of different details that you could learn about prescribing your antibiotics, right? And one thing that, you know, clinicians told us is, if you look at this, all it looks like is a bunch of negatives, right? You know, definitely a bunch of negatives. So along the way, we ultimately changed this dashboard layout into a more digestible and, you know, less, I guess, aggressive, you know, that you're doing something wrong, when in reality, you know, it's really just about your own interpretations. So this was actually my project, was basically going from this outline right here into the final product of, you know, something like this. But yeah, so now I'm going to tell you about a different experience. So I talked about my research, but I kind of want to know if anybody has ever been interested. Has anybody ever heard of startups? You know, that kind of thing. But I didn't actually ask if anybody's heard of them. But yeah, has anybody ever been interested in working in a startup? I know that they can be somewhat intense, and they can, you know, definitely not for everybody. This could be healthcare startups. This could be, you know, medical startups. I don't know, you know. So it looks like the majority of the crowd is saying, no, they're not interested. So that's fine. And it's not for everybody. So last summer, my internship was actually in a startup. And one thing that I will say about research versus corporate is the confidentiality is much more. There's a lot more things that I can't say, right? But I can give you a basic overview of some of the things that I did. I can give you similar ideas to certain things I did, but I can't exactly tell you the specifics of what I did. So this startup company, and I can tell you their names, they were M2MD Technology, right? And they would build similar products to what you would see on the right of the screen, the picture that you see to the right. So I'll actually tell you what this product is to the right. This product is basically a proximity detector. So the whole idea was 6 feet apart from one another, right? So during COVID, they're saying that you need to have a 6 feet distance between you and somebody else to reduce the spread of COVID, right? So this device, what you could do is you could put it in the center of a workplace, and it would tell you if anybody in your workplace has gone closer to one another within 6 feet. So this would be something meant for mainly like factories, maybe like Amazon, you know, their packaging plants. They want to make sure that everybody's maintaining 6 feet. So they could put one of these in here and then have their staff be sure to be safe. And if somebody gets COVID, then they could do proximity tracking, you know, or COVID tracking, you know, seeing, you know, who they should contact tracing. I'm sorry, that's the word. And I actually found this online. I was there whenever they were working on this. And one thing that they mentioned in the article that I found this on is rapid development. And that is so true. Okay. In a startup, what you're going to find is they are definitely working hard because, you know, in some cases, you know, maybe the startup is actually draining money, you know, and if you have shareholders, you don't want to be losing money. So yeah, to give you an estimate of how rapid this is, COVID became a thing really in America in March of 2020. This article posting about the new development in this technology that the M2MD Technologies created was posted in November. So less than a year worth of time spent on building a product, which is massive, more like 7 months or maybe less, just for a time frame, which is crazy. That does not usually happen. If anybody knows about you know, if anybody's ever worked in a company, 7 months is very fast or less. But that kind of leads to my, you know, final conclusions of, you know, I guess my journey to where I am. And I guess I did a kind of play on words here, but I'm actually planning to work for Epic Systems, which is in Verona, Wisconsin. They work in healthcare software. So it kind of, you know, made full circle. You know, I ultimately was trying to do nursing, and, you know, now I'm going to be working on nursing software, right? But yeah, that's really all for me. And I was just wondering if anybody had any questions, they could post it on the presentation, or they can message it in the chat and I'll try and answer. But that's all for me.
Thank you very much, Bryson. Very full experience and really nice, rich experience. I want to start with a question. I mean, did you get your decision of pursuing computer science after experiencing all types of adventures, or you start that earlier, then you just want to get all these experience? Which comes first?
So really, for me, what I think is I wasn't even 100% sure that I wanted to be in computer science, even when I transferred into computer science. I had, and this is probably a very common thing for a lot of people to say that have been in computer science. I worked with computers as a kid. At least I played on them, played games on them. Right. So I was like, yeah, it's cool. I didn't know anything about it, but that's really what intrigued me to go into computer science, I guess. But what made me stay is that I enjoyed the aspects of computer science when I started actually studying it in school. Hopefully.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. And another question, if you don't mind, I mean, you don't have to tell us the exact figure. Can you tell our students what is the salary range for entry-level computer scientist, software engineering, approximately?
Yeah, that's a good question, but I do not actually know the number. But I will tell you that it's probably. Let me actually just look it up.
I mean, based on your experience, when you have interviews and you search for companies, and they probably give you the range, right? I mean, you can share that with our students and potential computer scientists if they're interested. They know how much they're going to make and how soon they're going to pay back their student loan, etc.
Yeah. So what I'm going to tell you is, if you're trying to pay back student loans, definitely computer science is a great way to do it. I know that I just looked up on Glassdoor, and they say that the average base pay is something around $102,000 a year. And that's not even necessarily exaggerating anything. I would say if you're going to be working in South Carolina, you might be looking at $60,000 to $80,000 starting, even in South Carolina, which is quite amazing, honestly. But yeah, so I have a couple of questions. So somebody said that they had never heard of a startup, and what exactly is that? So what that means is a company before they become a publicly held, or sometimes publicly held company. So like Microsoft would not be a startup. Microsoft is a well-established company, but when Microsoft first became a company in 1975, right? They had to start out by the first entry stages of their career. So they needed, initial starting for their company. They needed backing for their company. So kind of that early stages of your company is a startup phase, right? I don't actually know the specifics of what classifies it as being, just a full-fledged company versus a startup, but I know that in the early stages, usually you would call a company a startup. Somebody said thanks. Somebody said that their relative worked in Wisconsin, and they said thanks. I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate it. And somebody asked me if I would want to go to grad school one day. So to tell you the truth, when I first came into Clemson, I was like, you know what? Maybe I will go to grad school. Maybe I'll do PhD. Maybe I'll do a master's program. Now, where I am right now, definitely I'm going to say probably not. I'm going to say I don't really have a desire to go past a bachelor's degree. I know that I'm going to make a fairly good salary. I would say very good, So I'm not going to really, I don't really care about going to get a master's. But yeah, so somebody asked kind of like duties for a job in like computer science. So yeah, in computer science, certain things that you might end up doing. I'll tell you my job specifically is I'm going to be considered a software developer. So what does that mean? That means that, you know, kind of like this Zoom application that we're on right now. This Zoom application would be something that I would be developing, right? So able to just basically create this kind of thing. That would be kind of my certain responsibilities in a software, in a healthcare startup, not startup, I'm sorry, in the healthcare world. If you have ever heard of my charts, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of my charts for, but I know it's a common thing. That's actually what Epic Systems made. So Epic Systems made my charts. So I may be even working specifically on that application. I never know. But yeah, so there's some questions in the chat. Research Education College. Who can apply for research education? So Research Education College. Not really sure what you mean by that, but I'm guessing it's the REU thing that I talked about, the research experience for the undergraduates. Yeah. So as long as you are a U.S. citizen, you can apply for research experiences, well, REUs. So REUs are basically government. They're called the National Science Foundation, which was like founded back in the 80s or something. Don't really know the specific year, maybe 60s. But basically, taxpayer dollars go into the National Science Foundation, and they fund research projects and undergraduate students to go to other universities and work for the summer. Anybody can apply. They're free to apply, and for the most part, you are guaranteed, unlike many internship positions where, you know, you may apply to 1,000 different positions and they just throw out your resume and never look at it. If you apply to a research experience, REU, they will look at your application. That's one of the somewhat requirements for the colleges, is they have to look at your application if you apply, which is, I mean, a good thing, bad thing, I don't know. I know that, you know, it gives you a lot better chances at being at least called back, right? So somebody said that they're planning to go into human trafficking. I know that computer science should be a huge part of this field. What part of the computer science should benefit me the most? Okay, so yeah, so if I'm guessing that by human trafficking, you're going to be doing some of the actual like tracking of, you know, potential like predators, that kind of thing, right? So what I would say is, for me personally, you know, I've never really done anything in that field. But I do know that just generally getting a computer science degree is going to put you, you know, up on the, I guess, totem pole, right? You know, you're going to have the technical skills to basically learn new technologies, right? But one thing that I could say is probably, and I can't really tell you the reason, I can't really give you definitive like statistics, but if you're going to be going into that field, I would say that cybersecurity is probably something you might be interested in. I know that that is one way that they may track potential predators, is by, you know, security flaws and that kind of thing. So actually, I'll tell you something interesting. Did you know that the FBI actually, they did kind of like reverse hacking, right? So when people would go to under websites for basically underage women, you know, on the internet, underage kids on the internet, and they downloaded explicit content, it would actually put a tracker on the person's computer, and it would allow for the FBI to see where their IP is. So, you know, so that's actually some software that you may be working on one day. So it's a very broad array of different areas you can go into. Yeah. But I think that is all the questions I had. And I guess there's one final poll I'll do for you. Has my presentation changed anybody's mind about their career? Anybody interested in doing computer science now? Okay. Okay. Looks like we got one yes. Okay. That's great. I'm glad. I'm glad that, you know, there is interest in the field. I know that, you know, best of luck to you. Hopefully, if, you know, you decide to change. That's good. Great. Great. Well, best of luck to you, Spencer. Well, that's it for me. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions more for Bryson? All right, let's thank Bryson again for joining us. He was a great student in USL, and hopefully he will get more and more successful in his field. Thank you, Bryson.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.